Right now, the most critical tool on a modern job site isn't a crane.
Oh, definitely not.
And it isn't made of steel either. It is actually this invisible safety net that is needed to catch, well, $10 trillion.
Yeah, 10 trillion with a T. It's a staggering number.
It really is.
Yeah.
We are talking about the largest wealth transfer in the history of the construction industry.
Right.
An entire generation of legacy builders. I mean, the founders who literally built our modern infrastructure over the last 40 years, they're all preparing to retire.
And that 10 trillion, it represents decades of accumulated capital, obviously. But more importantly, it represents this massive amount of raw operational knowledge. We are, quite frankly, looking at a succession crisis because building a successful construction company is a monumental feat.
Yeah, for sure.
But passing the baton to the next generation without dropping it, that requires a completely different set of tools and, a completely different mindset.
Exactly. And for you, the listener, whether you are managing a few local crews or looking at a massive regional expansion, this raises a really big existential question.
Right. How do you actually do it?
Right. As these legacy leaders step down, how do these companies successfully transfer that knowledge?
Yeah.
How do they handle more volume and, survive the transition without just drowning in a chaotic avalanche of paperwork?
It's the multi-trillion-dollar question.
It really is. So we are looking at data from Smart Business Automator's Market Intelligence Report to understand how construction companies are scaling today.
And there is some really fascinating stuff in there.
There is. So the mission for this deep dive is to explore how digitizing operational memory is the absolute key to surviving this wealth transfer.
Yeah, because the central challenge here is figuring out where the company's historical data actually lives.
Right. Where is it?
Well, when you look at a highly successful legacy construction firm, the operational memory is almost entirely undocumented. It just lives inside the founder's head.
Wow. Yeah, or like in the brain of a senior superintendent who's been walking job sites for 35 years.
Exactly. And if it is written down anywhere, it's probably buried in some disorganized, chaotic file server that hasn't been restructured since like 2008.
Okay, let's unpack this concept of the admin avalanche versus institutional knowledge.
Sure.
Because I'm picturing a legacy construction company's file system as essentially a haystack of blueprints.
That is a very accurate picture.
Right. You've got permits, daily logs, submittals, photos from the job site, material invoices, just a mountain of unstructured data.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
But I have to push back on the technology side of this for a second.
Okay, lay it on me.
If I take a muddy, hand-scrawled daily log from a foreman or, a photograph of a delivery ticket, and I just dump it into a digital system, how does a piece of software actually know what it's looking at?
Right, because it's just an image file.
Exactly. It's just pixels.
Well, it used to be just an image file, and that meant some junior project manager had to manually open it, read it, rename the file, and then physically drag it to the correct folder.
Which takes forever.
Well, it's a massive time sink. But what changes the game now is a combination of optical character recognition, or OCR, and natural language processing.
Okay, so it's reading the handwriting.
Yes. The system doesn't just see pixels anymore. It reads the text within the image. It recognizes the specific format of a daily log versus, say, the layout of a material invoice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It looks for context clues like a date format, a vendor name, or specific construction terminology, and it automatically tags, sorts, and categorizes that file.
So instead of a new manager digging through nested folders labeled, final version to actual final.
We've all seen those folders.
Right. Instead of doing that, they can just search for the electrical permit for a specific address, and the system pulls it instantly.
Exactly. Because it actively read the contents of the document when it was uploaded.
That's incredible.
And this goes way beyond just acting as a digital filing cabinet. The Market Intelligence Report highlights a concept called document intelligence.
Document intelligence, okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't just sort the document, it extracts the granular, critical details.
Give me an example of how that actually plays out.
Okay, let's say you have a really dense 300-page specification book for a commercial build.
Just a massive brick of paper.
Right. A new project manager might easily miss a specific, obscure fire rating requirement for the drywall that's buried on, like, page 47.
Oh, especially if they're juggling 3 other projects at the same time and just skimming the text on a Friday afternoon.
Exactly. But the machine doesn't skim. It processes every single line of text and cross-references it against the architectural drawings.
Oh, I see.
So if the drawing says standard drywall, but page 47 of the spec book requires a 1-hour fire rating, Document Intelligence surfaces that discrepancy immediately.
Wait, really? It catches that automatically?
Automatically. When you are transitioning leadership, having a system that acts as an automated safety net against that kind of oversight is invaluable.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It essentially replaces the mental index of the retiring founder, and that drastically reduces the manual coordination required to scale.
It's kind of like having an incredibly pedantic assistant who has memorized every single contract and spec book across every active job.
That's a perfect way to put it.
But, organizing files is really only half the battle. Because even if your documents are perfectly sorted, it doesn't solve the physical disconnect between the job site and the office.
Oh, absolutely. That gap is huge.
Right. So how do you keep a field crew who are dealing with mud, weather, and real-time physical problems perfectly aligned with the office staff who are managing the budgets without just resorting to constant micromanagement?
That physical disconnect is the exact friction point that breaks a lot of growing companies.
I bet.
The field is moving at 100 miles an hour, and the office is constantly trying to play catch-up just to document what actually happened out in the dirt.
Which is really hard to do.
It is. Usually that results in incredibly long, rambling field reports. Or, honestly, worse, quick verbal updates that never get written down at all.
Or the classic end-of-day phone call, right?
Yeah.
Where the superintendent is driving home, venting for 20 minutes about the concrete subcontractor.
Yes.
And the project manager in the office is just furiously trying to take notes on a legal pad.
We have all been there. And this is where natural language processing steps in again to handle daily log and meeting summaries.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
What's fascinating here is that the technology takes those rambling field audios or even the transcripts of an hour-long coordination meeting, and it breaks them down mathematically.
Really? How so?
It analyzes the sentences to identify action verbs, deadlines, and responsible parties. Then, it distills all of that unstructured venting into a clear, bulleted summary. Yeah, it automatically extracts the key takeaways, identifies the action items, and outlines the next steps.
Think about the impact of that on a newly promoted project manager.
Oh, it's life-changing.
They don't have to spend 2 hours at the end of every day writing recaps just to keep the stakeholders aligned.
Right. The system acts as the stenographer, which means the project manager can actually focus on managing the project.
And that's what you want them doing anyway.
Exactly. And the value compounds when you pair that summarization with Smart Search.
How does that work?
Project managers are no longer hunting through spreadsheets for a specific file name. They can use natural language to just ask a question.
Like talking to a person.
Pretty much. They can literally type, what was the agreed upon solution for the rebar clash on the second floor?
Okay.
And the system will search across all the meeting summaries, daily logs, and emails to deliver the exact answer.
Wait, hold on. This leads into the feature that I really have to challenge you on. RFI assistance.
I figured you might bring that up.
I mean, a request for information is a highly technical, legally binding document.
It is.
You are telling me an AI is going to generate draft responses about complex structural details based on old emails and past files?
Yes, it drafts them.
Isn't that incredibly risky?
Yeah.
What if the AI hallucinates and tells the engineer to use the wrong load-bearing steel just because it sounded confident?
That is a very valid, critical concern. And it's exactly why these systems are built with a human-in-the-loop architecture.
Human in the loop. Okay, explain that.
The AI is not inventing structural engineering principles, and it definitely isn't making the final decision. It uses a mechanism called retrieval augmented generation.
That's a mouthful.
It is. But basically, when a new RFI comes in, the AI scans the company's historical database.
Okay.
It looks at how the company's senior engineers answered this exact type of structural question 3 years ago on a similar project.
Oh, I see.
It retrieves that verified historical data and pieces together a draft based on that precedent.
So it's not generating a random guess. It is surfacing the company's own legacy knowledge.
Exactly.
But the new manager still has to actually read the draft, verify the engineering, and hit send, right?
Yes. The human expert is always the final filter. Always.
That makes a lot more sense.
But think about the time savings. Instead of that manager spending 4 hours digging through old project archives to find the precedent, the AI hands them the precedent on a silver platter in 10 seconds.
Wow.
It takes minutes to review and approve instead of hours to research and write. It ensures that the institutional knowledge, how this specific company solves problems, is actively being utilized to speed up communication.
Which is huge for succession planning.
Right.
But organizing files and fixing field-to-office communication doesn't solve the core issue of a retiring founder, which is their intuition.
Right, the gut feel.
Exactly. Legacy founders, the ones preparing for this huge wealth transfer, they are famous for managing risk based on gut feel.
Oh,
A 60-year-old founder can walk onto a job site, look around for 5 minutes, and just sense that the drywall crew is going to blow the budget, or that the framing is off schedule.
it's true. They just know.
Right. So if a new manager has all the organized data, but none of that hard-earned experience, how do they actually make the call on a delayed shipment?
Well, to answer that, we have to define what intuition actually is.
Okay.
A founder's gut feeling isn't magic. It is highly tuned pattern recognition. It is essentially undocumented data. A veteran superintendent has a database of like 4,000 past mistakes and delays stored in their head. So they recognize the warning signs instantly.
Right, because they've lived through it.
Exactly. But you cannot pass that subconscious database down in a will.
No, you can't.
The succeeding generation, the new executive team, they cannot rely on a gut feeling they haven't had the time to develop. They have to replace those gut checks with hard metrics.
Let's talk about the mechanics of how we digitize that pattern recognition, starting with schedule risk detection. Instead of a founder just knowing a delay is coming, how does a software system actually predict a bottleneck before it happens?
By mapping dependencies across the entire project schedule.
Give me a real-world example.
Let's look at a realistic scenario. Say a custom lumber package is delayed by 3 days due to supply chain issues.
Happens all the time.
Right. A human manager might just update the lumber delivery date and move on, thinking it's not a big deal.
Just a 3-day bump.
But the software understands the sequence of trades. It sees that if the framing is delayed by 3 days, the rough-in plumbers can't start on time.
Oh, man.
And if the plumbers are pushed back, they might overlap with another job they're scheduled for elsewhere, creating a 2-week gap in availability.
It's like a butterfly effect.
Exactly.
A lumber delay in week 2 somehow forces you to pay double for electricians in week 8. Or it pushes the drywallers back so far that you blow the final delivery date and face liquidated damages.
That is the perfect way to visualize it. And that logic directly applies to change order impact analysis, too.
Oh, change orders are a nightmare.
They are notoriously complex because a client thinks moving one interior wall is a simple request, right?
Just a wall, just move it 2 feet.
Exactly. They don't see how it ripples through procurement, labor scheduling, and material costs.
Right.
The system evaluates all of those downstream impacts instantly. So the team can go back to the stakeholder and say, we can move the wall, but here is the exact calculated impact on the timeline and the budget.
Wow, that completely removes the guesswork.
It does. Looking closely at Smart Business Automator's market intelligence report, we see that leadership gains significantly better visibility into risk and performance across multiple jobs when these systems are in place.
That real-time visibility is obviously crucial for protecting margins.
Absolutely.
But practically speaking, if I'm a project manager and this system is constantly mapping dependencies, analyzing budgets, checking specs, and predicting delays,
Yeah.
how do I not just completely shut down from alert fatigue?
That's a great question.
Because if I have a dashboard with 100 blinking red lights telling me everything that might go wrong, isn't that just as paralyzing as having no data at all?
It can be, yeah.
So how does project health monitoring keep a manager from feeling overwhelmed?
By acting as an attention filter, not a louder alarm bell.
An attention filter.
Right. True project health monitoring doesn't just surface every single variance. It scores them based on severity and margin impact.
Okay, so it separates the signal from the noise.
Exactly. If a lumber delivery is delayed by 1 day, but the schedule shows 5 days of built-in slack time for that specific phase.
The system doesn't freak out.
Right. It might just log it without triggering an active alert.
Got it.
But if a delay threatens the critical path of the project, it pushes that straight to the top of the dashboard.
That makes sense.
It directs the executive's attention only to the fires that actually need putting out, which allows them to make proactive decisions instead of reacting to expensive problems when it's already too late.
It scales the manager's attention, which brings us to the ultimate goal of all of this. To successfully execute a $10 trillion wealth transfer, the succeeding company must be able to handle more volume, more projects, and more complexity, but with less manual effort.
That's the dream.
And that requires custom AI integration, specifically connecting these tools via APIs and integrating them with the company's ERP.
Right.
Let's ground that jargon really quickly. For the listener, when we talk about API integration and ERPs, what does that actually look like for the people doing the work?
Okay, think of an API as a digital pipe that connects two completely different pieces of software so they can talk to each other.
Okay.
And an ERP, an enterprise resource planning system, is the heavy-duty financial and operational software that the folks in the office use to run the business.
Right, the accounting system, basically.
Yeah. Historically, the guys in the dirt use an iPad app to track their hours, and then someone in the office has to manually retype those hours into the ERP to run payroll.
Which is just prime territory for typos.
Exactly. Integration creates a digital pipe so the data flows automatically. Nobody is typing the same number into 3 different screens.
Here is my worry, though, when it comes to succession.
What's that?
Construction companies really pride themselves on their secret sauce, their unique operational DNA.
Oh, for sure.
It's how they handle quality control or how they specifically route safety alerts. So, what does this all mean for a company's unique DNA?
That's a huge concern for retiring founders.
If every construction company buys the same AI to automate their workflows, doesn't everyone just become the exact same generic cookie-cutter corporation?
Right.
Does adopting this technology erase the unique identity of the legacy builder?
That is a fantastic question, and the answer lies in custom AI workflows.
Okay, how do those help?
The technology is designed to adapt to the company, not the other way around. Let's say Company A's secret sauce is a highly specific 5-step quality assurance check before any concrete is poured.
Right.
And that check requires sign-offs from the structural engineer and the safety officer. The software doesn't force them to use a generic 3-step process. Instead, you build a custom digital workflow that mimics their exact 5-step process.
Oh, I see.
So when the superintendent flags the prep work as complete, the system automatically routes the exact necessary documents to the engineer and triggers a specific alert to the safety officer.
So the AI acts as the connective tissue that preserves their unique process, but it just automates the execution of it.
Exactly. The goal isn't to change how the company builds buildings. The goal is to remove the administrative friction that slows them down. And that really culminates in automated report generation. The system pulls data from the field logs, the budget variances, and the schedule dependencies to automatically create internal updates and executive summaries.
Which ensures consistency across the entire portfolio.
Yes.
Because when you are transitioning a legacy business to a new generation of leaders, having a standardized automated cadence of reporting is the bedrock of trust.
It really is.
The new executive team knows exactly where the company stands at any given moment on any given job site without having to physically drive to 5 different locations.
Right.
And the retiring founders can step away, confident that the ship is sailing smoothly and the margins are protected. It just allows the new leadership to handle more projects without being buried in administrative work.
It is a fundamental shift in how the industry operates.
It really is.
We think of construction as a world of heavy machinery, raw materials, and physical labor.
Cranes and steel, like you said.
Right. But the reality of scaling a modern construction business is almost entirely dictated by how efficiently you can process, structure, and act upon your operational data.
It's an incredible perspective shift.
It is, and it leaves us with a provocative thought to mull over.
Lay it on us.
In the midst of this $10 trillion wealth transfer, the most valuable asset a construction company passes down to the next generation isn't its real estate, and it isn't its fleet of excavators.
Oh, okay. What is it?
It is its digitized operational memory.
Digitized operational memory.
Yes, the intuitive knowledge of how to build codified into a system that can actually scale. Will the companies that fail to automate their knowledge, the ones that leave their operational history trapped in filing cabinets and retiring minds, simply be absorbed by the companies that do?
That's a powerful question. And a completely different way to evaluate the long-term value of a legacy business.
Yeah.
If you know a contractor who is dealing with succession planning or trying to scale their business, send them this deep dive. It could save them from drowning in admin work and help their field and office teams stay aligned.
Definitely.
Hit follow on whatever app you're listening on so you don't miss tomorrow's intel. And if you want to explore the data we unpacked today, visit smartbusinessautomator.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.